Today is June 26th. It's the 177th day of the year, and this is the On This Day podcast. Following World War II, Germany is divided up into 4 sectors controlled by the British, the French, the Americans, and the Soviets. And likewise, the city of Berlin, 100 miles inside the Soviet-controlled East Germany, is divided into 4 sectors as well. By 1948, the British and the Americans have combined their sectors, and all 3 allies have joined together to establish a new currency, the Deutschmark. These are all moves towards a reunification of Germany, which is something the Soviets are against. They've been invaded by the Germans twice in the past 40 years, and they have no desire to see a strongly unified Germany anytime soon. And the Soviets see the unified Allied sectors in Berlin as a threat, a combined capitalist enclave in the center of their communist paradise. The Soviets want the Allies out of the Soviet sector, out of Berlin. So in June 1948, the Soviets close all of the highways, all of the railroads, and all of the canals between the Allied border and Berlin in an effort to drive the Allies out. By June 24th, the blockade of Berlin is in full effect. West Berlin has a limited supply of food, coal, milk, water, and medical supplies, and no way to replenish the stock. But the Allies have no intention of leaving. There's nothing they can do about the closed roadways and railways. However, there's a 1945 agreement signed by all of the occupying powers that allows for access to Berlin by way of 3 20-mile-wide air corridors. On this day in 1948, the first planes carrying life-saving supplies for West Berliners land at Tempelhof Airport in Berlin as part of Operation Vittles, the Berlin Airlift. Tempelhof is the main airport in Berlin. It's located in the American sector. That's where the American C-47 Skytrains land. And the British are flying their Dakotas into Gatow Airport in the British sector. Because of demobilization and the downsizing of the military after the war, there are very few transport planes available in the early days of the Berlin Airlift. Berlin's daily needs are estimated at 646 tons of flour, 125 tons of cereal, 109 tons of meat and fish, 180 tons of potatoes, 64 tons of fat, 180 tons of sugar, 11 tons of coffee, 19 tons of powdered milk, 5 tons of whole milk, 144 tons of vegetables, 38 tons of salt, and 10 tons of cheese. Over 1,500 tons of food needed every day to feed the approximately 2 million West Berliners, plus another 2,000 tons of coal and fuel to feed their power plants and heat their homes. That's a total of 3,500 tons of supplies that need to be flown into Berlin every single day. With the C-47 Skytrain's capacity of 3.5 tons of cargo per flight, that's 1,000 flights per day. But there are only 96 C-47s available at the start of the airlift, a 300-ton daily capacity. Combined with the British capacity, the Allies are able to fly in about 700 tons of the 3,500 tons needed when the Berlin Airlift begins. But within days, more planes are brought into the rotation, and a fleet of C-54 Skymasters that have a 10-ton capacity each are added to the mix. And before long, another 2 airports are built to handle the increased volume of landing flights. Lieutenant General William Tunner is put in charge of the airlift for the Americans. and he turns what is controlled chaos into a precision operation that has a plane full of supplies landing every 3 minutes. In August 1948, there's a pileup at the end of the runway, literally, and the airlift gets stacked up in the sky over Berlin. A C-54 crashes on landing and bursts into flames at the end of the tarmac. Another C-54 is landing right behind it and blows out a tire trying to avoid the flaming wreckage. And a third lands on a runway under construction and ground loops, making a rapid and severe rotation on the ground, one wing lifting up and the other digging down. And all of the incoming planes stack up overhead. It is a day General Tunner calls Black Friday. No one is killed, but it sets up a potentially dangerous situation. Tunner institutes a new policy, creating a continuous loop of planes. If a pilot misses their approach, they turn right around and head back to Allied Germany, swap out for a fresh crew, and send the loaded plane back for another try. This not only reduces accidents, but it increases efficiency. 3 times as many planes can be brought in and unloaded in the time it takes to unstack planes circling overhead. Tunner also increases efficiency by replacing all of the smaller C-47s with the larger C-54s, when it's determined that both planes take the same amount of time to unload. In July 1948, just a couple of weeks after the airlift begins on this day, pilot Lieutenant Gale Halvorsen is spending one of his days off sightseeing in Berlin. He has his movie camera with him, and he goes to Tempelhof to film some of the planes landing and taking off. He comes upon a couple dozen kids who are playing nearby, and they're watching the planes land too. The kids are very excited to learn he's an airlift pilot. They tell him, quote, "When the weather gets so bad that you can't land, don't worry about us. We can get by on a little food, but if we lose our freedom, we may never get it back." Most kids Halvorsen encounters in war-torn Europe ask him for candy. These kids don't. He figures they're too proud to beg. Halvorsen wants to give them something, but all he has on him are 2 sticks of Wrigley's Double Mint gum. He gives them to the kids, telling them if they don't fight over them, he'll drop more candy for them the next day. The kids divide the gum up into little pieces amongst themselves, some happy just to sniff the wrappers. They ask him how will they know which plane is his. He says, "I'll wiggle my wings." That night, Halvorsen and his crew gather together all of their candy rations and make little parachutes out of handkerchiefs to carry the candy boxes safely down to the ground. The next day on his approach to Tempelhof, Halvorsen wiggles his wings and drops the candy to the kids. And he makes another drop the next week. And every time he flies over, there are more and more kids waiting for him to drop his candy bombs. And soon he's receiving mail, thank you notes from the kids and artwork, addressed to Uncle Wiggly Wings and the Chocolate Flyer. Halvorsen and his crew quickly run through their candy rations. Soon the whole squadron is chipping in, and before long, General Tunner catches wind of it. Tunner decides the candy operation should be expanded, and in September 1948, Operation Little Vittles begins, providing chocolate and gum to the children of Berlin. News spreads back home, and donations of candy and handkerchief parachutes pour in from all across America, spearheaded on the home front by college student Mary Connors, who takes charge of coordinating donations from candy manufacturers, and Dorothy Groger, who organizes a sewing circle to sew little handkerchief parachutes. From September 1948 to May 1949, dozens of Little Vittles pilots dropped 23 tons of candy in 250,000 tiny parachutes to children all over Berlin. At the height of the airlift, a plane is landing every 45 seconds at Tempelhof. And by the following spring, May of 1949, it is clear to the Soviets that their blockade has been ineffective in ousting the Allies from Berlin and in preventing a reunified Germany. The blockade is lifted in early May 1949, and the state of West Germany is formed 2 weeks later. The Berlin Airlift is referred to as the battle that saved 2 million people without firing a shot. But the Berlin Airlift is not without casualties. 101 people, including 31 Americans, are killed during Operation Vittles and Operation Planefair, the British codename for the airlift. Most of the fatalities due to plane crashes. In all, 2.3 million tons of food, coal, fuel, clothing, milk, and candy are flown into Berlin in the Berlin Airlift that begins on this day in 1948. There are 188 days left in the year.